Where to start? I'm going to give you a little bit of the history of SEO and a little bit of history of Google. One of the things that you guys just talked about, it was kind of interesting when I was listening to the responses that you gave about how to grow your business, is that you talked about key thing is get clients, right? That's really all we want at the end of the day. We want more clients. We want to build our business that way. Well, the truth nowadays in terms of the internet is that 60% of all business is coming from Google. So majority of the traffic that we get to our websites, it's coming from Google. Google represents 80 to 90% of all search engine traffic. And that means that it is the key place that if you want to go and find clients, well, it's kind of the key place to go. Other than networking events like this is a great place too. That's the other 40% maybe. So with Google, it sort of came about, like, the history basically is this. Back in the day, there were really one thing that determined your rankings within the search engines. And when people say rankings, it kind of maybe gets a bit confusing, because what it really means is it's all based on keywords. And a keyword is what does somebody type into the search engine when they're looking for you? So if you're a plumber, they would search plumber and then probably location. If you're selling cars, well, car dealership and then location. So there's certain keywords that people will type when they're looking for whatever product or service. And the weird thing is there's generally patterns that happen. So majority of people will use the same keywords over and over again when searching for a client. So it's not that they always that there's a million different keywords. It's usually like a handful of keywords, a few hundred keywords that will represent that industry. So what you want to do is find out what are the best keywords that get the most type-ins into Google, and you basically target those keywords. Now, back in the day, before Google, one of the things that determined that ranking was basically just mentioning those keywords over and over again on your website. You just literally fill your website with the keyword and you would rank at the top. And everyone would be like, oh, I'm number one for whatever keyword. And that there was a problem with that though, because what ended up happening was people did exactly that. They would literally fill their site with spam, because it would just read like keyword, 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 keyword. And then people would, when they would go to the search engines, they would see these sites that are just kind of junky in terms of the content that they had on them. And so people started not liking the results that they were getting. So Google came around and said, hey, this, having the keywords in the site is important, but there has to be something that qualifies whether or not the site itself is a good site or a bad site. So they took another algorithmic thing, which was links. And what a link is basically a connection from one site to another. So Tammy actually spoke about that on her site, where she had the links to you with those little cards to your site. Well, those links count as like recommendations from Tammy to you. And the more recommendations you have from other people, the better Google will say, okay, well, Tammy recommended them and 100 other people recommended them. They must be a good site. So keywords plus links would equal ranking. So what happens is if you can control those two things, you can kind of dominate the search engines. And that's what specialists like me try to do. We try to manipulate those two elements in order to get the best ranking. So we figure out what keywords to target, and that's done through keyword research, where you do you go through like reports and try to figure out what keywords are the best keywords to target. And then what you do is you find out, okay, how can I work that language into my site that doesn't look spammy, because you don't want to have it where your people coming into your website don't understand, it's just comes across as junk. And the search engines don't like that either. They like what's called natural language. And natural language means that when somebody reads it, they read it and say, oh, this is really good content. So, but it still has to have the keywords. So you got to have that kind of balance between natural language and keywords. But one of the things that people don't understand about search engines in general is that when you put in keywords, not only are you appealing to the search engine, but you're also appealing to potential viewers to your website. So I remember once there was this client and they basically were a web design company, okay? And they had this beautiful site. It looked amazing, but you go in and they never mentioned the word web design. So nobody knew what exactly they were doing, okay? So they never mentioned the word web design. They never mentioned, anything web or design related. And they would mention like fantastic, spectacular, pretty, like all these kind of weird kind of words, but they would never mention the keyword that people would recognize to say, hey, this site is about providing web design services. And so what ended up happening was, sure, people would come to them, but people wouldn't know what they were about. And then they would just leave. There's a billion other sites to go to. So when you use the proper keywords, you're basically not only dialing into the search engines, but you're dialing into your clients because you're speaking in the language that they just searched when they came to your website. A really good example of this is Land's End. Land's End is one of those sites that we SEO people always talk about because it has one of the highest conversion rates of any website on the internet. A typical website will convert 2% of its traffic to clients. Well, Land's End converts around 14 to 15%. And the reason they do is they really optimize their language and they keep it consistent. So when you come in and you search for baskets, well, the page that you land on will say baskets and, buy baskets, and they'll use all the kind of related keywords on that page so that when the user comes in, they say, well, this is the page I was looking for because it's talking in the language that I just searched. And then when you check out, they even continue that language even in the checkout. So it gets really high conversion rate as a result because it's speaking in the language of their clients. So that is kind of the other bonus benefit of SEO, that you not only convert the search engines to get you better rankings, but you convert your clients and help them understand what you do and better convert them to being clients. So the goal with SEO is not just to drive more traffic to your business, but to help those people that are coming to your site to really, convert. That was the thing that I really learned as I did SEO over the years. I've been doing SEO since 1998. So it's been a few years that I've been doing this. And I remember back in the early days, they would, the clients would want to target pretty much all the big keywords that got lots and lots of searches. And that was a really common kind of attitude towards SEO. I want to target computers because everybody searches for computers, or I want to target sex. That was the other thing that clients always wanted to put into their website. I don't know why. And I'm like, well, that has nothing to do with what you're selling. You're a librarian. Why are you putting these keywords into your site? And, that was the attitude. So what I had to do is really educate clients that it's not about just stuffing your site with a bunch of random keywords that don't mean anything. It's about using the language that is going to get you the right type of clients and to get you the right, to rank well for those right type of clients. One of the strategies that I love to employ, and this is something that you maybe a little takeaway that you can get from this quick talk, is what I would do is I would target what's called a long tail. So a long tail, short tail, it's kind of like SEO jargon, but a long tail just means that a bunch of keywords. So for example, real estate, okay? So if you search real estate, generally you're gonna get like the biggest sites on the web. And those sites won't be necessarily relevant to somebody that's in Toronto or in Markham or in Kleinberg or Vaughan or wherever they are, because they'll be like, well, okay, this is a real estate. Sure, it's real estate, but it's not real estate in my local market. So what you generally want to do is target what's called a long tail, which is like real estate agent in Markham. That's because it's a longer phrase. That's a long tail. And that generally will be a little easier to rank for, and because there's less competition. You're not competing with the whole entire world. You're competing with just the local market. And the funny thing is that local market is usually not very savvy. So what they'll do is they'll target real estate and they'll try to compete on that keyword, which is almost impossible to compete on. And you, by using the long tail, have sort of narrowed down that search so that Google's like, wow, this site is the most relevant because it really does say this long tail keyword and it says it very precisely. So that's one of the tricks that you can do, is find these kind of long tail keywords that really focus in on your target market. So another great benefit, again, speaking into the language of your clients, is that when you use that long tail, that, you know, the first search that people usually do is that real estate search. And then the second search that they do is that long tail, because they realize that the first search was useless. So when they do that second search, they are really happy when they land on a page that specifically targets the keyword that they were looking for, the thing that they were looking for. So you'll generally find that the conversion rate actually doubles just by that one thing where you have that targeted phrase being used. So this is one of the things that I will do, and this is a trick that I kind of talk about a lot, is I talk about the winning the lottery. Okay, this is a kind of a strategy that I like to employ. So the goal is you want to win the prize of getting more clients. Okay, that's the goal of the lottery. You want to win that big prize. Well, you can win any lottery. You can win Lotto Max. You can win the Powerball. You can win any lottery you want, as long as you buy all the lottery tickets. So if you buy all the combinations, you will win whatever lottery it is that you're entering. Well, with Google, this lottery is really about keywords, and it's basically targeting all those combinations. So for example, I like using real estate because I've optimized about 1,000 real estate agents over the years. And I'm not even joking about that. It's actually more than that, but I'm going to say 1,000. So with real estate, you can do, for example, real estate agents, Toronto, real estate agents, Markham, real estate, and literally create pages, which I consider kind of like lottery tickets for each of those keywords. And you can target like new homes for sale, condos for sale, buying homes in, you know, all those kind of keywords. So there's like literally hundreds of keywords that can drive traffic. And it doesn't matter what the business is, there's hundreds of keywords that you can basically target, and you can build pages around that to really focus in, dial into those keywords, so that both you get better conversion and you get better rankings within Google. So there's a whole strategy on how to build those pages. So generally, it's not something where you just throw up a page and it says the word once and then it's going to rank. There's actually a strategy and a method to how you build those pages. You structure them in a certain way, where you have those keywords built in, but you build them in a very, very precise way. And I'm going to actually tell you the secret to a certain extent. This is not 100% the secret, but this is the basic secret. And it's really 3 words that you have to remember: top, middle, bottom. So if you remember those 3 words, you can turn off this and just walk away, and you'll be a master of SEO, because those 3 words will make you dominate the search engines. And what does that top, middle, bottom mean? Well, it means having the keyword at the top of the page, in the middle of the page, and at the bottom of the page. And if you put it in those 3 places, what happens is Google it's trying to find the most relevant pages to provide within the search results. So what it's looking for is, okay, where does that keyword appear? If it just appears at the top of the article, well, is that as relevant as something that has it through those 3 places, where it's talking about it at the beginning, talking about it in the middle, and then continues to talk about it at the very end? So that's a much more relevant page, and Google loves that and generally ranks it better. There's tricks within that, but this is the kind of the biggest trick that you can do is understand top, middle, bottom, and just 3 words. And that will allow you, like, that's one of the tricks that I've been using pretty much since the beginning of this whole marketing journey that I've gone on, where I've literally optimized thousands of sites and use this trick to constantly get clients ranked. So remember the long tail, remember the 3 words, and you'll have like a big bonus over your competitors, because you'll be more focused on the keywords that kind of, will drive traffic to your business, and you'll be better at having those pages optimized. Now, the topic that I'm supposed to be talking about today is a bit on AdWords and how to understand the differences between Google paid versus Google free. So when you go on to Google, you will actually, if you type in whatever keyword it is, you will see at the very top ads, okay? Now, the funny thing is people know that those are ads. The majority of people realize that those are ads and they don't click them. So the ads get about 10% of the traffic on desktop and about 30% of the traffic on mobile, because on mobile, the ads kind of take up most of the space. So they're more likely to be clicked on the mobile. So the point is 70 to 90% of the traffic that is going to Google is going to the free listings. Now you can pay for whatever keyword it is that you want, and you can rank #1 if you pay. You'll be in those ads, okay? And there's one keyword, it's like a financial keyword. That's one of the most expensive keywords. For example, every time you click that keyword, like the ad, it's like $200 US to click. You can bankrupt people just by clicking. It's that expensive. So because ranking within the ads is based on how much you spend. And there's a bit of an algorithm there. It's your spend history. It's number of clicks times the actual spend, like per click. But the point is, they look at how much money you're spending compared to the guy that's below you. And if you're spending more, you'll be #1 spot. So basically what will happen is in certain industries, you'll be just spending through the nose in order to get that top ranking. And for anyone that does AdWords, you can actually still make it work. And the trick is never go for the #1 ranking in AdWords. Always go for #2 or #3. It's another trick. You can save huge money just by being in that #2 or #3 spot. You can actually cut your ad costs in about half. A lot of people want to be #1 and they'll spend just to be that #1 spot. But what ends up happening is, I actually had this experiment happen with me where I had a client and their industry was drug rehab, okay? They would do drug rehab. And this was back in the day when you could actually advertise that on Google. And what would happen is they had a big ego. They wanted to be #1. They wanted to be #1 for the ads. So what happened was they would spend literally $20,000 a month, okay, to be #1 for whatever keywords they wanted to be. And what would happen is people would call them. They'd get lots of calls. And people would call them and they would say, how much is your service? And they would say, well, it's like $15,000 to $20,000 per month. And they'd get click. And then that same person would call the next company on that ads list and they would say the same numbers. But after a while, they'd be like, okay, I guess it's going to cost this much. And then they would sign up with that third guy. So what we did is we said, okay, this is what's happening. We're not getting the conversions. We're paying a lot, but we're not getting the conversions. So what we did is we got that #2 to 3 spot. And we found that not only did we pay about half as much, the budget went from 20 to 10,000 per month, but the conversions went up 3 times. So this is like, there's strategies you have to, like, it's one of those things where if you learn these kind of secrets, you can kind of dominate without spending. Personally, I like the SEO approach because what I can do is say, okay, well, instead of spending $20,000, let's just dominate on the keywords that are these niche keywords that people are searching for that will get high conversion and really just get it for free. I like free. So so that's where I would generally go. So that's the difference between AdWords and the free area of Google. So the ads are at the top, and all the organic, what's called the free listings, are below. Now you still have to kind of pay to be in that top organic stuff, because generally what you're doing is you're spending money on building content, and you're spending money on building links. And if you do those two things really, really, really well, you can dominate those top positions. So that's in a nutshell SEO. And I could go on for days about this, but